are joined now by the great Bob Costas from NBC Sports. The Olympics is rapidly approaching, and there's a lot of things to hit. What's happening, Bob? Tiki and Tierney, how are you, buddy?
Hey, Brandon, how are you? Hi, Tiki.
How you doing, Bob? Look, you'll appreciate what BT and I just had to go through. We're doing.
Don't go, Bob. Don't go.
No. We're doing a read, and I know this from experience. Just watching Bob pick up a read it cold like it was inflection perfect. We're stammering through this read. We're probably gonna have to do it again, or Sam's gonna have to re-edit it. Give us some tips on how to do these reads.
I'll give you tips, man.
Well, you had like 2 lines. I had all the lines.
I did have a few stumbles.
But Bob, you are
like
the pro. You are the pro amongst all pros at doing these things.
Practice. You do something often enough, you make a few adjustments. You know, like you hold the football a little higher, closer to your shoulder. You know what I mean? You make an adjustment now and then, and you got it.
Hey, right? You're never too old to learn new tricks.
You know what's funny, Bob?
Right.
And I wonder if, and we'll get to the Olympics for sure in a moment, but just a general thought on broadcasting, because, I mean, obviously you've been at the top of our profession and for years. I mean, it's amazing. And I wonder, this happens to me, and I'm about 30 million pegs below you. But, like, if I make a mistake, like with a read or whatever it might be, there's, like, this internal mechanism. I can't describe it, but it's like this surge of heightened awareness and emotion that suddenly starts pulsating through my body. Now, it's not visible, but it's like it's my mechanism to make sure I don't stumble again. It's strange how that works. When that happens to you, listen, even though you're Bob Costas, you stumble on, you're human, you kind of get that recalibration, like, okay, I'm not messing up again. You know what I'm saying? Did that make any sort of sense or no?
Oh, it makes complete sense because you're always starting out like you think you're going to pitch a perfect game, and you never do. Even your very, very best broadcast, sometimes a studio broadcast, if it's just introing things, reading scripts, or even reading an essay or commentary that you've written, or sometimes even ad-libbing, I've probably had some of those that were about as good as I'm capable of. But let's say calling a ball game, back in the days when I did the games, the World Series games and whatnot on NBC and now on the MLB network, even when you have your A game going, you don't ever get it exactly perfect. At least in my mind, there's always something you look back on and say, even if it wasn't a mistake, I could have said this in the 7th inning, or I could have said this in the 2nd quarter that would have been even better. Or why didn't I think of that 5 seconds sooner, and the timing of it would have been a little bit better. And then if you actually make a mistake, even though you have to go on and you're professional, I feel that exact surge of emotion that you're talking about. It's like, damn it, Costas, how could that have happened? You look to pitch a perfect game, and you gave up a hit in the 1st inning. But then you got to say to yourself, you know what? A 2-hitter is still a good game.
There you
a 3-hitter is still a good game. And, especially in the modern era, most people aren't watching something from the very beginning, from the kickoff or the first pitch to the end. So someone's tuning in the 4th inning. That's the first utterance they're going to hear. You start there with them.
Yeah.
So you can't let down, even if I think it's like Tiki would tell you, first few drives of a game backfire, Michael Jordan's first few shots or LeBron's first few shots clank off the rim. You got to believe in who you are, and you got to keep firing.
That's right. Here you go. Bob Costas, NBC Sports, of course, MLB Network as well. We'll squeeze in a baseball question at the end. Certainly want to talk a little bit of Olympics, and Bob is with us on Tiki and Tierney.
Hey, Bob, do you think that's changed a lot over the last, let's say, decade or so with social media? Because things that you maybe missay or facts are skewed a little bit, you get roasted for it. Can you pay attention to those things and still function?
I pay as little attention as humanly possible, but I'm aware in a general way because, for example, I think starting in London there was some hashtag NBC fail.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so much about me. It was about NBC's approach to the Olympics, tape delay, and whatnot. And you have to be aware of that because there might be within it somewhere, a needle in a haystack, a legitimate criticism that we could use to improve. But you also have to put it in perspective. If 40 or 50,000 people weigh in on NBC fail, it's their right, and some people may agree with them. But it seems like a tsunami just in raw numbers. But at the same time, 20 million people are watching every single night. They're not so disgusted that they're not watching. And every bit of reliable research tells us that while some people may rightly be upset that they're not seeing the pole vault in prime time, that the vast majority of people, especially now that we stream all of it live somewhere or other, and you have so many NBC platforms on regular television, if you really want to see something, you're going to see it. If you want to see it at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're going to see it. Most people want to watch it the way NBC presents it, in prime time, and with some backstories. I'm not a fan of hearts and flowers and too many violin strings, but in truth, NBC has gotten away from that over the last 3 or 4 Olympics anyway, and the profiles are more informative and entertaining and even humorous to give you a sense of who these competitors are, because most people don't follow the Olympics the same way they follow baseball, football, or basketball, so you got to kind of bring them up to speed as to who these people are. Even the people that are obsessed with the Olympics, so they'll live stream something in their office at their desk at 11 o'clock in the morning, they're actually more likely to watch it at 8 or 9 o'clock at night in prime time, watch it again. So everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but we shouldn't overreact to fringe opinions when the obvious information is that the vast, vast majority of people don't just accept it the way it's presented. They like it that way.
You know, Bob used the expression, you know, hearts and flowers and the sentiment behind some of the stories. And listen, it's there if you want it. It's cool. The human interest element is always fascinating, although it can be, on occasion, overdone, whatever, overcooked a little bit here. I'm curious. I don't know if we'll get hearts and flowers for the golf coverage. I'm just hoping we get enough guys to show up on the first tee to actually play. I know you're a big golf guy. A lot of the big names, for obvious reasons, electing not to compete, whether it's Rory, whether it's Dustin Johnson, whether it's Jason Day. How do you think the golf coverage plays out? I'm really curious.
Well, I think, I'm being honest now, golf returned to the Olympic program. This isn't going to help it in terms of getting it entrenched with the people who run the IOC. There are cases to be made for other sports. Softball is a glaring omission. It kind of got swept up with baseball in the minds of the mostly European people who are the heads of the IOC. They kind of lump them together, and there's a good reason why baseball might not be an Olympic sport, because you can't get the best players in the world assembled during the summertime. They're playing elsewhere, but you can get the best softball players in the world. So there's a case to be made for that, and golf may be on the bubble. In fairness, I think if golf is to be an Olympic sport and deserves to be an Olympic sport, you have to look at Brazil as an aberration and consider the reasons, the legitimate reasons why some golfers are bypassing that, and that doesn't mean you'd have the same situation in Tokyo in 2020 or wherever the next Summer Olympics after that is in 2024. But I think, Brandon, it also connects to a larger question. And I've said this many times, and it's nothing against the Olympics. The dream team was a once-in-a-lifetime, maybe once-for-all-time situation, and it captivated everybody. But in truth, those who play major team sports or sports like golf or tennis may love participating in the Olympics, but you can't say logically that it could mean the same thing to them that it means to Usain Bolt or Michael Phelps or 99% of Olympians, for whom the Olympics is the absolute pinnacle of what they do.
Yeah.
If you gave every golfer truth serum, would they rather win the Masters or would they rather win an Olympic gold medal?
Oh, you mean like Rory McIlroy? He took a lot of truth serum. I got to tell you, Bob, I appreciated what he said.
I agreed.
Listen, don't treat us as dummies.
I don't have any problem with what he said.
Yeah.
What he said was true for him, and it made sense. You know, I think he had every right to feel the way he felt. I think, look, Andy Murray winning the gold medal in 2012 was meaningful because the games were in London.
Yeah.
If you said to Andy Murray right now, what would you rather have, your Wimbledon title or a gold medal in Rio? We know what the answer to that is.
No, we get it. I hear you, Bob. By the way, we're going to talk to Nota Begay next segment. He is out at Royal Troon. Mickelson just dropped another birdie. Speaking of golf, Lefty's playing pretty well, so that's coming up here. But right now, we're talking he's -5, and he's one shot. Actually, he's tied for the lead, -5 through 10. Bob Costas with us here on Tiki and Tierney, Olympic stuff.
Bob, we know that the issues around this Olympics have been vast and growing, it seems. Zika is obviously one a lot of the golfers are using to drop out, but the violence in some of the favelas, you talk about the pollution in the waters. How are you all in NBC going to cover it? Because I know just from the very start, you're putting the the opening ceremony is on tape delay. What's the reason, and how are you guys going to approach this?
Well, the opening ceremony on tape delay is not a big deal. The opening ceremony is not a competition, so you're not withholding results from anybody. And we try to present every bit of it live, but it does need a little shaping, a little editing here and there in order for it to be the best possible television production.
Makes sense.
Nothing that is consequential will be left out. And so tape delaying that is not a big deal. Everything else, although it may be tape delayed in some cases in prime time, everything else that's in terms of competition during the Olympics can be seen somewhere, live streamed or on one of the many NBC platforms, or go to NBCOlympics.com. Plus, a lot of what is actually in prime time on regular NBC will be live because there's only a 1-hour time difference between Rio and the eastern part of the United States. So in that respect, I think those complaints are going to be muted, and I don't have any real problem with a slight delay on the opening ceremony. But in terms of what we're going to do about the issues, we've already announced that we're going to have an hour-long primetime special the night before the Olympics start on regular, full-blown NBC that will be partly a preview of the games and partly an examination of this vast array of issues. We're not going to hide from it. We're not going to bury our heads in the sand of Copacabana Beach. We're going to acknowledge it. We're going to say this is the backdrop against which these Olympics take place. And then once we've done that, we'll have our fingers crossed that these issues don't intrude on the games and that we can mostly focus on the drama and the competition and the things that people really want to see. But if those issues do impact the games as they go on, we'll go back to it and deal with it, both on the NBC Sports side and with the help of NBC News.
Yeah, no, you have to. Bob, are you worried about any of these things?
I think you have to be concerned.
Personally, are you worried about these things?
There are security issues. We at NBC are less likely to be affected directly by some of the other issues, the sanitation in the water and the Zika virus and that sort of thing. But you have to be aware and take the proper precautions. And where my concerns are also, Brandon, is I've got to be informed. There could be a moment at which I'll have to pivot from being a sports anchor into part of NBC's news operation.
Yeah.
Now, it's not like 1972 when in Munich, when that tragedy unfolded and Jim McKay distinguished himself with his combination of journalism and humanity. At that time, ABC Sports was all the world had to rely on. The other networks didn't have the capability of sending anything out. CNN didn't exist. The Internet didn't exist. Even much of ABC News wasn't there. So Jim McKay was the only source. Now I would be among many people. Lester Holt will be there. Many NBC correspondents will be there. So it wouldn't be just me, but still I'd be part of it. So in addition to learning platform divers and gymnasts and sprinters, I'm trying to familiarize myself as much as possible with the geopolitics and all the security apparatus there, just in case. I hope I don't have to, but just in case I have to respond to that.
Well, we know you'll be ready if you have to. And again, we hope you don't have to, but you're Bob Costas. You'll be ready to go.
Me too.
Bob, final thing. I want to ask something quickly about baseball here. I'm a huge baseball fan. I know, we share the same passion. I was connecting the dots to the All-Star games, and obviously I know this will resonate with you. 1933, 7 All-Stars that started the game, Hall of Famers. That happened in 1985 as well with Henderson, Brett, some of those names, Cal Ripken, Eddie Murray, Winfield. I'm watching the game the other night, and who knows the path some of these young stars eventually take. Like Dwight Gooden, a couple of years in, we all thought he'd be in the Hall of Fame. You never know.
Right.
But I'm watching. I don't care about the ratings. They're meaningless to me the other night. To me, the state of the game right now is awesome. It is as fertile as it's ever been. There are athletes everywhere. No, slow, heavy-footed first baseman who can't move. Everybody could pick it.
Except for Big Papi, who's still great in his own way.
yeah. Except for Big Papi. I guess in a long-winded way, are you as encouraged with the future of baseball as I am? I think we're in a great spot.
I agree with that. In every measurable way. We all have our childhood memories of the romance and the mystique of the game, and there was something about it when I was growing up and you were growing up that was different and had its own appeal. And we should always treasure that. But in every measurable way, except national television ratings, baseball is way, way ahead of any other time in its history in popularity. It's one problem, and it's not a small problem, but when you put it against everything else, baseball's still thriving. But the one problem is that it's a bigger local and regional sport than it is a national sport. Now, this year, if the Cubs, let's say, made it to the World Series, they'd transcend that problem. It would become a national story, and it would involve even people who aren't even casual baseball fans. Non-baseball fans would want to watch it. But generally speaking, there are about, out of 30 teams, probably 24 of them that wouldn't generate that much of a national following if they got to the LCS or to the World Series. But at the same time, regional ratings and local ratings for the Cardinals, for the Royals, for
Giants,
the Phillies, if they're any good, those ratings are exceptionally strong. And you look at attendance, and you look at international marketing, and you look at the way people follow it on the Internet. Everything else about baseball is peaking. And when you talk about the All-Star game, I'm with you, Brandon. I'm not that concerned about the ratings because there's an easy explanation for it. When we were younger, if you lived in an American League city, maybe the only time you saw Darryl Strawberry or Dwight Gooden, or in an era before that, Hank Aaron or Willie Mays, the only time you saw them was either on the Game of the Week with Kurt Gowdy and Joe Garifiola, or the All-Star game. And if you lived in St. Louis, the only time that you saw Carl Yastrzemski was at the All-Star game or in the World Series. Now you can see everybody every night on highlight shows, on the full baseball package if you get that, on the Internet. Plus, because of the economics of the game, great players move around. So they're not as identified with one league or one team as they used to be. And then you've got interleague games. So the novelty of Jake Arrieta facing Mike Trout just doesn't exist anymore. It's not like Whitey Ford pitching to Willie Mays. So naturally, something's lost and something's gained. So they like interleague play. Baseball makes gazillions of dollars off all these television packages, but one of the consequences is that the specialness of the All-Star game is diminished. It's not baseball's fault. It's just a changing world.
That's the way it is. Bob, we could do this all day. Have a safe trip.
Well, as you know, one question I can take all day.
Yeah, that's why
I consider every question to be an essay question.
That's why.
It's like filling up the blue book in college. You're going to put everything you know in the book and hope they give you the best possible grade.
And that's why we love you, Bob.
Nicely done. Safe travels. Have a great call with NBC. Enjoy the Olympics, Bob. Thank you.
Brandon, Tiki, thanks a lot. Take care, guys.
You got it, man.